Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Justice High. This movie tells the story of a tough girl who always helps her friend who is being bullied. The bullies tried to get rid of her, but her karate skills made her invincible. Let's find out her story in Justice High. Justice High begins by showing a girl named Cha Young who is being shouted at while being pelted with paper by her friends at school. Cha Young is known to have been expelled from school for fighting with a schoolmate. The scene then switches to show the atmosphere in the teacher's room where Cha Young and her father, Mr. Yang, are working on Cha Young's transfer to a new school. After learning that Cha Young was expelled from her old school for fighting, her homeroom teacher warns that the school will suspend students who are caught fighting. After taking care of her transfer to a new school, Cha Young sees a geeky young man named Jong-gu who is being bullied by his friends. Jong-gu is often bullied because he is always reluctant to give cheats to his friends. At first, Cha Young doesn't want to interfere and wants to leave right away. However, when Jong-gu says something about fairness to his bullying, she gets interested and approaches them. Cha Young purposely records the bullying actions of Jong-gu's friends to make them angry. When they ask her to give up her cell phone, she refuses and they get into a fight. Cha Young can easily defeat Jong-gu's bullies who are only big mouths, but cannot defend themselves. Jong-gu, who witnessed Cha Young's prowess in martial arts, was stunned. The next day, when Cha Young first enters the new school, she turns out to be placed in the same class as Jong-gu and his bullies. After school, Jong-gu ventures over to Cha Young to thank her for her help the day before. However, with an icy expression on her face, Cha Young asks Jong-gu to stay away from her, even pretending not to know each other. The scene then switches and shows a chaotic atmosphere in a diner when some thugs are reluctant to pay for their food. Jong-gu then tries to warn the thugs to pay, but he gets bullied instead. The diner owner, who turns out to be Jong-gu's mother, then asks the thugs to get out of there. The next day, Cha Young is visited by a girl named Shayna, who is her upperclassman. Shayna is about to make calculations on Cha Young for beating up her men. Shayna, who had intended to bully Cha Young, was actually humiliated in front of everyone. Jong-gu, who again witnessed Cha Young's courage in dealing with bullied students, then approached her again and asked her to teach him martial arts. Frankly, Cha Young refuses Jong-gu's request because she doesn't want to get involved with him or anyone else. However, Cha Young finally melts when Jong-gu says he wants to learn martial arts to defend his mother, who is often bullied by the thugs who mess up at her mother's diner. Cha Young then takes Jong-gu to her father's karate dojo because her father is a karate martial arts coach. Mr. Yang is very happy with the arrival of Jong-gu who wants to practice karate because it means his karate dojo finally has another student besides Cha Young after all this time. The scene then turns to Shayna, complaining about Cha Young's presumptuous actions to the student council member, Ha-soon. According to Shayna, Cha Young should be severely punished for humiliating her and trampling on the dignity of seniors at school. The next day, Cha Young is summoned to the student council room to meet Jin-yuk, the student council president. Jin-yuk then asks Cha Young about the fight that happened. However, Cha Young said that she was only defending Jong-gu, who was bullied by Shayna's men at that time. Hearing this, Ha-soon, who was also in the student council room with Shayna, then told Cha Young to leave because according to him, Shayna's men were the ones who started the commotion. Back to Jong-gu who is focusing on basic karate training together with Cha Young. Even though he felt pain all over his body due to the strenuous physical exercise, Cha Young kept encouraging him and as time went on, they became closer. One night, all the administrators and student council members are seen partying to welcome the return of a young man named Kong-sik. But Ha-soon looks uninspired and chooses to go out with Jin-yuk. Not long after, they argue because Jin-yuk decided to join the gangsters and Ha-soon doesn't like his decision. The next day, while at school, Jin-yuk is approached by a gangster leader named Sang-jin. They hold a meeting in the student council room and discuss everything about the things Jin-yuk will do after officially becoming a member of the gangster. Sang-jin also goes to Ha-soon and invites him to join him, but Ha-soon refuses the invitation because he doesn't want to be a delinquent. On the other hand, Jong-gu is again being bullied by his friends, but this time, he manages to fight off his bullies, which turns out to be just his imagination. Having not been able to fight them, Jong-gu was then a target, but then came Ha-soon trying to help Jong-gu. At first, Ha-soon can beat Jong-gu's bullies. However, Kong-sik, famous for being fierce and good at martial arts, suddenly appears and beats Ha-soon. Cha Young sees Jong-gu being bullied again, then helps him and it turns out that she can beat Kong-sik quite easily. Ha-soon is surprised to see Cha Young who can subdue Kong-sik easily then decides to practice karate at Cha Young's father's dojo. Unlike Jong-gu, who wants to master martial arts to defend his mother, Ha-seung is willing to spend money on self-defense courses just to get close to Cha-young. However, Cha-young is cold to Ha-seung because he used to be part of the bully group at school. Ever since Jin-yuk joined Sang-jin's group, gangsters have started taking over the school and harassing the students. With Kong-sik acting as the head of the delinquent students, they start forcing the other students to deposit money to the student council as tribute. Only Cha-young's class isn't required to deposit tribute because Kong-sik doesn't want to get into another fight with her. One day, Jong-gu, who has a high spirit of justice, cannot tolerate the actions of delinquent students who are bullying a geeky student. Although Jong-gu has not mastered martial arts like Cha-young, he is still determined to defend the student, even though he must be battered. After school, Jong-gu then begs Mr. Yang to teach karate faster to defend himself and defend the oppressed. Mr. Yang then teaches Jong-gu some karate moves and tells him to practice harder. On the other hand, Ha-seung is also increasingly practicing karate, even though he first came to the dojo just to get close to Cha-young. Seeing Ha-seung's seriousness in practicing karate at her father's dojo, Cha-young's attitude softened even more towards him and they became close friends. One day, Ha-seung takes Cha-young and Jong-gu for a walk. The three of them then went around the city while enjoying the scenery. Jong-gu invites his friends to stop by his mother's diner and introduce them to his mother on his way home. Jong-gu's mother is happy that her son is now more confident and has close friends. The next day, Ha-seung and Jin-yuk get into a fight because Ha-seung is fed up with Jin-yuk deliberately letting Sang-jin's gangster group bully the students at school. On the other hand, Jin-yuk is also angry at Ha-seung, who he thinks has changed a lot and is acting holy, even though they used to often bully students at school. Jin-yuk, who can't accept defeat after Ha-seung beat him, then asks Shae-na to harm Cha-young because he thinks that Cha-young is the one who has made Ha-seung change drastically. Not only that, Cha-young's presence also threatens his influence at school, so he has ambitions to get rid of the girl. Shae-na, who secretly likes Ha-seung, then agrees to Jin-yuk's plan to poison Cha-young. The next day, Shae-na invites Cha-young to the student council room. She says she wants to apologize to her and offers her a cup of poisoned tea. Shae-na then talks about Ha-seung. However, Cha-young looks indifferent and insists that she has no relationship with Ha-seung, who is only a student at her father's karate dojo. Realizing that Cha-young is actually a good girl, Shae-na can't bear to harm her and immediately slaps her hand when she is about to drink tea that has been mixed with poison. Jin-yuk enters the room and sees that Cha-young is fine, then slaps Shae-na because he thinks she's incompetent to do her bidding. Kong-sik and some of his henchmen then ambush Cha-young, then lock her up in the student council room. On the other hand, Jong-gu overhears the conversation of Kong-sik's men and finds out that they're keeping Cha-young in the student council room. Jong-gu then looks for Ha-seung and tells him about it. Ha-seung immediately called Jin-yuk and he confirmed that he was holding Cha-young in the student council room and asked Ha-seung to come there if he wanted to save her. Ha-seung and Jong-gu then head to the student council room to save Cha-young, but they are confronted by Kong-sik and his men at the gym. Despite having to do their best to face Kong-sik and his men, Ha-seung and Jong-gu manage to beat them all. After that, Ha-seung and Jong-gu go to the council room and fight Jin-yuk. Covered with bruises and almost completely drained of energy, Ha-seung and Jong-gu seem overwhelmed against Jin-yuk. Ha-seung even lay down helplessly. Jong-gu, whose martial arts skills can't compete with Jin-yuk, can only surrender when Jin-yuk beats him to death. But as it turns out, it was all a ploy to free Cha-young. When Jin-yuk's attention turns to Jong-gu, Ha-seung frees Cha-young and she immediately gets up to fight Jin-yuk. It didn't take long for Cha-young to subdue Jin-yuk. After Jin-yuk gave in to defeat, the three of them then left the student council room. The film ends by showing Mr. Young's karate is getting more and more students, so he has enough income to meet his and Cha-young's needs.